Hello friends, welcome to Poketo Booksy. Today, we're diving into The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. Have you ever wondered, no matter what you do, whether it's good or bad, what's the real reason behind it? I can guarantee you, once you listen to this audiobook, you'll never see the world, your relationships, or even yourself the same way again. If you're not ready to face life's harsh but necessary truths, then maybe this audiobook isn't for you. But if you're willing to pull back the curtain and uncover the secrets hiding behind it, then come along with me on this journey. Tell me, have you ever wondered why people, while doing good, suddenly turn selfish? Why is it that, even in loving families, tension and conflict still exist? Why do certain ideas, good or bad, spread through society like wildfire, taking over people's minds? This audiobook will give you the answers to those questions. Answers that will shake the very wiring of your brain. It's like putting on a special pair of glasses that lets you see the real code, the true mechanics of how the world works. This is for those who want to look beneath the surface, who don't just want to know what is happening, but why it's happening. Who are we, really? Are we truly in control of our decisions, or is someone else pulling the strings? To find the answer, you'll have to stay with me until the very end of this journey. Chapter 1. The Immortal Replicator. Who's really playing the game of life? You or your genes? Let's start with a story. Imagine going back billions of years. Our Earth had no trace of life, only oceans filled with countless types of chemicals. Sunlight blazed down, lightning cracked across the sky, and those chemicals were constantly stirred and shaken. Then, one day, a miracle happened. Among those billions upon billions of chemicals, a single molecule, a tiny particle, came into existence with one extraordinary trait. It could make a copy of itself, an exact replica. Think about it. A particle capable of producing more particles just like itself. We call this a replicator. It wasn't alive. It was just a chemical. But this was the very beginning of life's story. Soon, it wasn't alone in the ocean anymore. It kept making copies over and over again. Before long, the seas were filled with millions of these replicators. But this copying process wasn't perfect. Every now and then, a mistake would occur, and that mistake would create a slightly different kind of replicator. Sometimes, this new version was better than the original. Maybe it was tougher, maybe it survived longer, or maybe it could make copies faster. And that's when the real game began. The replicators that were more durable lasted longer. Those that could copy themselves faster began to outnumber the rest, and the ones that made fewer mistakes in copying were able to pass on their kind more successfully. A sort of competition had begun. This wasn't some conscious battle, just a struggle for existence. Every replicator had one single goal, one single selfish drive: to survive and make as many copies of itself as possible. They didn't care about anything else. They had no enemies, no alliances, just the urge to increase their numbers. This pure self-interest laid the foundation for the game of life. And that game is still going on today, though it has changed its form. The very first replicator vanished long ago, but its copies, its descendants, are still alive. Richard Dawkins explains that those early replicators are what we now call genes. Yes, the very genes that exist inside our bodies and in every living creature on Earth. Even today, these genes are doing the exact same job their ancestors did billions of years ago, making copies of themselves and keeping themselves alive by passing from one generation to the next. That is their selfish purpose. When we say selfish gene, it doesn't mean a gene has a brain or consciously acts selfish like we do. No, Selfish here means any behavior that increases the gene's chances of surviving and spreading. A gene that produces behavior, leading to more copies of itself, will spread across the world. A gene that produces behavior, leading to fewer copies, will, over time, fade away and disappear. It's a very simple rule, yet its consequences are deep and shocking. We humans like to believe we're the rulers of this world. We think, we make decisions, we love, we hate. We like to believe we're the masters of our own lives. But Dawkins presents a truth that shakes the ground beneath our feet. He says, we're not the real masters. The true masters are the genes living inside our bodies. Our bodies, our brains, our emotions, everything about us has been shaped and built by these genes. And why did they create all this? For one reason only, so these genes could build themselves a safe home. A living machine that would protect them from enemies, find them food, and most importantly, help them reach the next generation. We humans, and every other living creature on Earth, are survival machines built by those immortal replicators. The genes sit inside us, driving us forward, just like a driver controls a vehicle. It's a shocking idea, isn't it? To think that our entire existence might simply be in service of a few invisible, selfish particles. Could it be that our love, our hate, our friendships, our rivalries, everything is nothing more than a grand play written by our genes? Genes are immortal. We are not. Our bodies will one day perish, but if we have children, our genes will live on inside them, and then inside their children, traveling from one generation to the next, from one species to another, simply changing vehicles, changing bodies. Think about it. The genes inside you may be older than your great-great-grandfather. They've been traveling for millions of years, moving from one body to another, all for one purpose: to keep themselves alive. When you look at life from this perspective, its meaning shifts entirely. We're not the ones playing the game of life. Our genes are. They're the players, and we're just the chess pieces. Which raises an important question. If our genes are so selfish, and they built us only to protect themselves, then how did we become so complex? Why did they give us such a vast and powerful brain? Why did they fill us with emotions? After all, what use would a simple chemical particle have for such things? Why did these genes make us? They're survival machines, so brilliant and complex. We'll find the answer in the next chapter, where we'll discover how these genes designed us as vehicles and the hidden remote controls they use to drive us. Chapter 2. We are just vehicles. The magnificent machines built and operated by genes themselves. In the last chapter, we explored how life began and uncovered the real players in this game, the immortal replicators, our genes. Now, let's dig a little deeper into this idea. Imagine you had to build a robot that would work for you. What would you give it? You'd give it arms and legs so it could move around, eyes so it could see, and a computer, a brain, so it could make decisions. That's exactly what our genes did. Over billions of years, those replicators that once floated freely in the ocean began to build a protective shell around themselves to increase their chances of survival. At first, this shell was very simple, just a simple wall of protein. But over time, competition grew fiercer. Other genes were also building their own survival machines. A shell alone was no longer enough. Now, there was a need for machines that could move, search for food, and escape predators. And that's where the evolution of bodies began. Hands, legs, wings, eyes, ears, noses. These are all tools built by genes. They are parts of their survival machines. Richard Dawkins says that all of us, humans, animals, trees, plants, are nothing more than vehicles for our genes, like vessels with our genes sitting in the driver's seat. But here's the catch. They don't control us directly. Think about it. When a computer programmer designs a video game, they don't control every single move of the player in real time. They simply set the rules of the game, and the player plays within those rules. In the same way, instead of controlling us moment to moment, our genes have installed something inside us, a brain, a computer to run the program. This brain is incredibly powerful. It allows us to understand the world, learn from it, and make decisions. But our genes shipped this brain with some built-in programming. Things like, when you're hungry, look for food. When you sense danger, run or fight. Move toward what feels good and stay away from what causes pain. These are all rules written by our genes. When you see delicious food and your mouth starts to water, that's not you. That's your genes program telling you, this is a good source of energy. Eat it, so your survival machine keeps running. When you hear an unfamiliar noise in the dark and feel fear, that's your genes program warning you about a possible threat. Our emotions, love, anger, fear, joy, are essentially the buttons on the remote control held by our genes. They use these emotions to push us into actions that increase their chances of survival and reproduction. Take the feeling of love, for example. When a man and a woman fall in love, it's actually the genes' way of ensuring they come together, have children, and raise them, so those genes can safely pass into the next generation. And why is the desire for sex so powerful? Because for genes, it's the most direct and most essential path to making copies of themselves. Any gene that failed to create a strong sexual drive would have vanished from the world long ago. In the same way, a mother's love for her child is also part of the gene's strategy. A mother's genes know that half of their code lives inside the people will be escaped, that they have said for their best basic levels for a future brain. Could it be that our love, our tenderness, our deepest bonds are all just the result of a chemical conspiracy? A kind of genetic programming? Dawkins says. Yes, at the most basic level, that's the truth. But that doesn't mean these emotions are fake. They're absolutely real. We feel them deeply. It's just that their underlying cause is biological, rooted in the self-interest of our genes. We are incredibly sophisticated and complex vehicles. Our genes have given us a brain with the ability to learn and improve its programming through experience. They don't micromanage every single thing we do. Instead, they've given us a goal: stay alive and reproduce. Then they've left us on our own to figure out how to achieve that goal. That's why we learn new things, invent tools, create art, compose music. It's all thanks to the powerful brain our genes built for us. But here's the real question. Are we destined to remain slaves to our genes forever? Can we ever break free from the rules they've set for us? Here lies a fascinating puzzle. If every gene works only for its own self-interest, and if we are merely machines built by these selfish genes, then why do we see acts of pure selflessness and sacrifice in the world? Why does a honeybee sting an intruder, knowing it will die, just to protect its hive? Why does a soldier willingly lay down his life for his country? Why does a mother leap into a fire to save her child? If a gene's only purpose is to keep itself alive, why would it let its survival machine die like that? That seems to go against its own self-interest. So, is this a flaw in the gene's programming? Or is there a deeper hidden self-interest even behind this seemingly selfless behavior? This question takes us to one of the most fascinating parts of this audiobook. To solve this puzzle, we need to look behind the mask of altruism and see whether the face of the selfish gene is hiding there too. Are you ready to discover why a selfish gene might actually drive you to help others? You'll find the answer in the next chapter. Chapter 3: Selflessness. Born from selfishness. Why would a selfish gene drive you to help others? Now we arrive at the question that has puzzled scientists and philosophers for centuries. If we are all vehicles built by selfish genes, then why does selflessness or altruism even exist? And of visible. Why do we help others, often even when there's no direct benefit to us? Dawkins gives a surprisingly radical yet simple answer. What appears to be selfless behavior on the surface is, at the genetic level, deeply selfish. To understand this, we have to see the world from a gene's point of view. Imagine you have a gene that pushes you to help others. Now the question is, how will that gene spread through the world? If you go around helping everyone, giving away your food, your time, and your energy, your own chances of surviving and having children would drop. And if you don't survive or reproduce, that helpful gene would disappear right along with you. So then, how did altruism even evolve in the first place? Here, Dawkins presents two main ideas. The first is kin selection, and it's actually pretty simple to understand. On average, you share about 50% of your genes with your full siblings. With your cousins, that overlap is about 12.5%. Now, put yourself in the shoes of a gene. Your mission is to make as many copies of yourself as possible. You're sitting inside one body, yours. Next to you is another body, your brother's, and there's a 50% chance he's carrying a copy of you. If danger strikes, you have two choices: save yourself or save your two brothers. From the gene's perspective, saving both brothers is actually the better deal. Why? Because each brother has a 50% chance of carrying your copy, and two brothers means 50% plus 50% equals 100%. That means that by giving up your own life to save two brothers, you're actually saving the equivalent of one full copy of yourself. So a gene that pushes its carrier to help close relatives isn't being noble, it's being smart. It's really just protecting copies of itself that live in other bodies. That's why parents are willing to make huge sacrifices for their children, because kids carry 50% of their parents' genes. Nurturing them, protecting them, and helping them grow is, at the genetic level, just self-preservation. And that's also why we're generally more inclined to help family members and close relatives than strangers. Our genes have a vested interest in their survival. Instead of helping a total stranger, our instincts naturally push us toward helping those who share our blood. This isn't some conscious math we're doing, it's a deep-rooted instinct that millions of years of evolution have hardwired into us. The genes that could recognize relatives and help them were the ones that survived and spread. So when a mother sacrifices for her child, she's not truly being selfless. She's fulfilling the selfish agenda of her genes. Harsh as it may sound, that's the biological reality. But that's just about family. The real question is, why do we help strangers or friends who don't share our DNA? With people who share no blood relation to us, Dawkins introduces another idea: reciprocal altruism. Simply put, you help me today, I'll help you tomorrow. Or in everyday terms, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Picture this: two unrelated people. One is hungry, the other has extra food. If the second person gives some of that food away, they take an immediate loss. But if, in the future, the roles reverse and the first person returns the favor, both end up better off. In a society where people help each other, everyone's chances of survival go up. So, a gene that encourages you to help others, expecting that help will be returned, will thrive in such a community. But for this system to work, certain conditions have to be met. First, You need the ability to recognize and remember people. You have to recall who helped you and who betrayed you. This is why humans evolved such an incredible capacity for facial recognition and memory. Second, you need to punish cheaters. If someone takes your help and never returns the favor, you don't help them next time. This puts a natural check on selfish behavior. Friendship, loyalty, gratitude, guilt, empathy, all these complex social emotions evolved to keep this system of reciprocal altruism running smoothly. When someone helps you, you feel gratitude. That feeling of gratitude pushes you to help them in the future. And when you betray someone, you feel guilt, a built-in emotional signal that stops you from doing it again. So, even the friendships we see as pure and selfless are, at the genetic level, a selfish deal. It's a long-term investment. We've now seen how seemingly selfless behavior, whether toward relatives or friends, is ultimately driven by genetic self-interest. A gene is either trying to protect its other copies or making a trade for a future benefit. This perspective lets us see human social behavior in a whole new light. It explains why we stick close to family and friends, why we cooperate, and why, at times, we betray. But the story doesn't end here. If cooperation and love benefit our genes, then why do conflict and hatred still exist? The family, supposedly the strongest center of cooperation, often turns into a battleground. Husband and wife, parents and children, brothers and sisters, conflicts and tensions are everywhere. If everyone's genes are supposed to help one another, then where do gender conflicts and generation gaps come from? The answer takes us straight into the arena of relationship struggles, a battlefield designed by our very own genes. Chapter 4. The Battlefield of Relationships, the real game behind love, family, and betrayal. We've already understood how genes promote cooperation and selflessness, so they can spread themselves further. But there's another side to this picture, one that's just as real, and that's the side of conflict. Dawkins explains that because of the selfish nature of genes, even our closest relationships often turn into a battlefield, a war zone. Let's start with the relationship between husband and wife, or in biological terms, between male and female, which Dawkins calls the battle of the sexes. From a genes perspective, both the male and the female have the same ultimate goal, to pass their genes on to the next generation. But the strategies they use to achieve this goal are completely different. And that's where the conflict begins. For a female, producing and raising a child is a massive investment. Creating an egg takes a lot of energy. Pregnancy consumes months of time and energy, and raising a child requires years of hard work. A female can only have a limited number of children in her lifetime. That's why her best strategy is to choose a male with the highest quality genes possible, strong, healthy, intelligent, and willing to help raise the children. She focuses on quality. On the other hand, for a male, producing sperm is quick and cheap. He can produce millions of sperm in a single day. In theory, a male could father hundreds or even thousands of offspring over his lifetime. That's why the best genetic strategy for a male might be to mate with as many females as possible, spreading his genes far and wide. He focuses on quantity. Now you can see exactly where the conflict begins. The female wants, informant to the love of the female, a loyal and supportive partner, that the male's genes might push him to keep looking for more opportunities. The female has already made a huge investment in the child, so she wants the male to invest equally. The male, however, might prefer to invest as little as possible before moving on to find another mate. This is a biological conflict that appears in different forms across almost every species. In humans, it often shows up as commitment issues, infidelity, and betrayal in relationships. When we feel insecurity, jealousy, or possessiveness in a relationship, it's often the result of these deep-rooted biological strategies at play. Now, let's look at conflicts within the family, between parents and their children. It may sound strange, because we usually think of the parent-child bond as the most sacred relationship. But on a genetic level, even here, self-interest plays its game. A mother shares 50% of her genes with each of her children. From her perspective, all her children are equal, so she wants to divide her resources like food, time, and love equally among them. But now, think from a child's point of view. A child shares 100% of its genes with itself, but only 50% with a brother or sister. That's why a child's genetic interest is to get more resources than its siblings, more of the mother's attention, more love, more food. The child would ideally want the mother to invest twice as much in them compared to a sibling, because they're twice as closely related to themselves as they are to their brother or sister. And this is where the conflict between parents and children begins. It starts from birth. Then a baby cries to grab its mother's attention or throws tantrums to get its way. When a second sibling is born, the first child often feels a surge of jealousy. This isn't just an emotional reaction. It's part of the child's genetic strategy to secure as many resources as possible for themselves. As the child grows older, this genetic tug-of-war takes a different form: the generation gap. Parents want their children to follow their guidance and live by their rules, because they're thinking about the well-being of the entire family, that is, the well-being of all their genes. But the child focuses on their own self-interest, the well-being of their own 100% genes, over the collective. It's not about morality or what's right or wrong. It's simply the push and pull between genes housed in different bodies, each pursuing its own survival strategy. Even sibling rivalry comes from the same root cause. They may love each other deeply, yet still compete for attention, resources, and advantage. Because they share genes, siblings also share a natural bond, but at the same time, they compete because they're fighting over the limited resources their parents can provide. When you look at it from this perspective, you start to see a more realistic picture of family and relationships. It explains why love and conflict so often walk hand in hand. It helps us understand our own behaviors and emotions more clearly. Relationships aren't fairy tales. They're complex negotiations rooted in biological realities, where cooperation and conflict constantly collide. But now comes the final, most important question. So far, everything we've talked about has been about biological inheritance, the genes that travel from one generation to the next through bodies. But humans also have another form of inheritance: cultural inheritance. Ideas, language, traditions, religion, fashion. How do these travel from one generation to another? They have nothing to do with our bodies or DNA. So, is there another kind of replicator at work here? Another copy maker? Is there some invisible force that has taken hold of our minds, just like genes control our bodies? Dawkins gives this new kind of replicator a name, perhaps the most famous idea in this entire book. These are the viruses of the mind, ideas that latch onto our brains and want to live forever. So, are you ready to discover these mind viruses? Chapter 5: Viruses that take over the mind. Memes, the ideas that want to live forever. So far, our journey has been deep into the world of biology. We've seen how genes, the biological replicators, built bodies as vehicles and ended up taking over the planet. But the human story doesn't stop with genes. Humanity's defining feature is our brain and our culture. In what is perhaps the most revolutionary part of this book, Richard Dawkins introduces a bold new idea. He says that just as the engine of evolution in biology is the gene, the engine of evolution in human culture is another kind of replicator altogether. He gives this new replicator a name, the meme. Today, when we hear meme, we think of funny images or viral videos on the internet. But Dawkins meant something far deeper than that. For Dawkins, a meme is a unit of cultural transmission. It could be an idea, a tune, a fashion trend, a proverb, a belief. Any piece of information that spreads by copying itself from one mind to another. Think of it this way. Just as a gene jumps from one body to another through sperm or egg cells, a meme jumps from one mind to another through imitation, learning, or teaching. When you hear a catchy song and find yourself humming it later, that song has acted like a meme, making a copy of itself inside your brain. And when you share a story with a friend, and when they pass that story on to someone else, it's still the same meme at work. Religions, political ideologies, scientific theories. These are all powerful meme complexes, large networks of interconnected memes that stud together.
Oh, wow! What meme do you want to buy?
Just like genes, memes have their own selfish drive. They care about only one thing: replication. Their sole goal is to make as many copies of themselves as possible. A meme doesn't care if it's true or false, noble or harmful, helpful or destructive. The only thing that matters is how effectively it can spread. So, what makes a meme successful? What qualities help it dominate minds and outcompete other ideas? Just like successful genes, successful memes share a few key traits. First, accuracy of replication. Ideas that can be copied easily and precisely are more likely to spread. Second, speed of transmission. The faster an idea moves from one mind to another, the more successful it becomes. Third, longevity. Ideas that stay in people's minds for a long time have more opportunities to spread. For example, the concept of God is one of the most successful memes in history. It's been around for thousands of years, spreads incredibly fast, is taught to children from an early age, and its core elements remain almost unchanged across generations. Another example is the idea that you should wash your hands before eating. It's a beneficial meme. It promotes health, so it spreads easily. But not all memes are helpful. Some can be downright harmful. Like the dangerous ideology of a cult or a false rumor, if it has the ability to spread, it will spread. From this perspective, our mind is like a battlefield where millions of memes are competing for attention, each trying to secure a place in our thoughts. Advertisements, news stories, social media posts, books, songs. These are all memes fighting to take root in our minds. Our brain is a fertile soil they grow in, and our culture is the medium through which they spread. This is a powerful idea because it explains why some concepts are so sticky, why certain trends suddenly explode in society and take over conversations, behavior, and even beliefs. And why some beliefs take such deep root that changing them becomes nearly impossible. This shows us that we're not just slaves to our genes, we're also carriers of the memes that settle in our minds. We spread them, protect them, and sometimes even fight and die for them, just like our bodies work to preserve and pass on our genes. But now comes one final, crucial question. Up until now, we've been talking about biological inheritance, genes passed from one generation to the next through our bodies. But humans also have another kind of inheritance, cultural inheritance. Ideas, language, traditions, religion, fashion. How do these get passed from one generation to another? They have nothing to do with our bodies or DNA. But here's the question. Could there also be a kind of replicator, a copycat, at work here too. Is it possible that some invisible force has taken hold of our minds, just like genes have taken hold of our bodies? Richard Dawkins gives this new kind of replicator a name, one that has become perhaps the most famous idea from this book. He's talking about the mind viruses, ideas that seize control of our brains and seek immortality. So, are you ready to find out what these mental viruses really are? Chapter 6. Conclusion: Rebellion against our creators. So friends, after this long and mind-shaking journey, where have we arrived? We began billions of years ago, in an ancient ocean where an immortal replicator was born. We saw how that replicator, our genes, created complex vehicles like us, just to keep itself alive. We also realized that our love, our friendships, even our acts of selflessness, are often just hidden strategies of genetic self-interest. We explored the battlefield of relationships, where different genetic strategies clash for survival. And in the end, we uncovered the mental viruses, memes, that rule over our thoughts and our culture. After hearing all this, it might feel like we humans are nothing more than puppets, our bodies dancing to the strings pulled by genes, and our minds swayed by means. So, are we truly free? Do we have any real power to live life on our own terms? This is where Richard Dawkins offers us a ray of hope, a thought that captures the very essence of this entire book. He says, yes, we might be puppets, but we are a very special kind of puppet. We are the puppets who can see our strings. We humans are the only creatures on Earth who, thanks to our consciousness and self-awareness, can understand that we are products of genes and memes. A lion has no idea it hunts only because its genes command it to. A bee doesn't realize it's giving up its life to protect the genes of its relatives. But we, humans, can know this. We can read books like The Selfish Gene and understand the biological and cultural programming that drives us. And that's exactly where the path to freedom begins. The moment we recognize who's pulling our strings is the very moment we can choose to pull back. Dawkins says, we can rebel against our own creators. We can stand up to the tyranny of our selfish genes. Our genes may push us to be selfish, greedy, and focused only on ourselves and our families. But with our awareness, we can make a conscious choice to be selfless and altruistic. We can help people with whom we share no blood connection and from whom we expect absolutely no future benefit. We can choose not to have children, which is the ultimate betrayal to our genes. We can create a society built on cooperation, kindness, and compassion instead of pure selfish calculation. And in the same way, we can rebel against the means that try to take over our minds. Instead of blindly accepting every idea or tradition, we can question them. We can use reason and science to tell the difference between good and bad memes.
Oh, mine. Can you ever be love?
We can reject the harmful and false ones and embrace the ones that are beneficial and true. This book isn't here to make us pessimistic. It's here to wake us up. It's here to show us who we are and where we came from.
This teaches us why we have certain weaknesses and urges. They're all rooted deep in our biology. When we realize that feelings like jealousy, greed, or favoritism towards family are just part of our genetic inheritance, we can actually learn to manage them better. This book gives us powerful self-awareness. It shows us that our true strength lies in our consciousness. Our free will isn't some divine gift. It's born from the knowledge that we're programmed. And knowledge is power, the power to change. Sure, we can't completely erase our genes or means. They'll always be part of us. But here's the thing. We can sit in the driver's seat. We get to decide which road to take. We're not just vehicles being driven. We're the vehicles who can pull out the driver and take control of the wheel ourselves. So, that's what it truly means to be human. And that, my friends, is the ultimate and most powerful message of the selfish gene. So friends, that was the audiobook summary of Richard Dawkins' masterpiece, The Selfish Gene. I hope this journey gave you fresh perspectives to think about life and the world around us. This book reveals that beneath the surface of life, there's a deep, complex game being played. But the best part, we're not just spectators. By understanding the rules of this game, we can actually change it.
Thanks so much for listening to the full audiobook summary. If this video shifted the way you think or taught you something new, please hit that like button. It really motivates us to bring more amazing audiobooks your way. And don't forget to drop a comment below telling us what shocked you the most or which idea you found the most fascinating. Catch you in the next one.
So, what do you think? Are we just puppets controlled by our genes and memes? Or does our consciousness truly set us free? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We can't wait to hear from you. And if you want more mind-blowing, knowledge-packed audiobook summaries like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on Poketo Booksy and smash the bell icon so you never miss a video. See you in the next audiobook. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thinking. Thanks for watching.